I have spent a lot of time alone in life.
Yes.
My upbringing, I didn't feel like I had a lot of confidants and people I could rely on for emotional support.
Yeah.
So feeling capable of being alone and knowing that I can do it allows me to open myself up and be vulnerable to a lot more connections now.
Yeah.
Because I'm not afraid that if this doesn't work out, I will be broken.
Right.
If this relationship ends, as all relationships will end, as all lives will end,
Yeah.
it's not going to break me because I can be on my own,
Right.
which I think is great that I use that ability to explore and open myself up to as many connections and relationships with people as I can.
Yeah.
It allows me to experience a lot more, as
Right.
I am addicted to knowing.
Yes.
I want to know all the things.
Same.
I want to experience all the things.
Same. Yep. This is Single and Probably Asexual with Kendra K. Welcome back to Single and Probably Asexual. I have another very exciting interview today with my good friend, Zach, aka Machine, aka Zechariah Obadiah, aka just Zach. I'm excited about today's episode. We're just going to have a super candid conversation about celibacy. Something that I don't think a lot of people openly talk about, or I feel like there's also a lot of shame wrapped around celibacy, and I don't think there should be. So I'm excited to talk about this with you today.
Excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you. And we're recording on Zach's bed right now, and he's got some, the fanciest recording stuff that I've seen, even though he'd probably say, beg to differ.
Yeah.
But
it's mediocre at best.
It's better than my Snowball microphone, so this is kind of like luxury right now. But quick backstory, Zach and I met out on the playa, Burning Man 2019. I'll never forget it. I walked up, he was on this ladder building some scaffolding for the camp, and he goes, "I'm Machine." And I said, "Okay." And from then on out, I've asked him for help for almost everything in life, and he's got all the answers for me. We were luckily able to also go to this year's Burn Together with a lot of our crew from 2019, and that was really special, even though we're kind of broken up, but it was a wild year. But yeah, so I'm just going to let Zach go ahead and introduce himself here and talk a little bit about him, his life, and then we'll start getting into some celibacy talk.
Well, I'm Zach. I'm 34 now. But I grew up in Eastern Washington in a rural community, and grew up very religious and conservative, and at some points in my young life was determined to be a priest, and I did not lose my virginity until I was 19 in the second year of college, but went through a lot of changes in my first year of college.
I didn't know that you wanted to be a priest.
Yeah.
We'll circle back. We're going to circle back to that. Keep going. Sorry.
Yeah, I was very active in my church as a kid. Became a deacon. I would do scripture readings. I helped serve communion. But definitely have always felt called to service and helping. And in a small community of 4,000 people, church was definitely the easiest and most standard way to go about that, and where I got a lot of joy out of.
Right.
So put a lot of energies into that as a kid. Also into community theater and band and all the things.
Yeah.
But speaking of sexuality and celibacy, I realized after going to college and getting a much broader view and broader perspective on the world that a lot of the ideas I had were incorrect, and I didn't have the full picture, so decided to want to experience things for myself. So went to a party and just hit on a woman there, and ended up hooking up that night.
And how old were you at this point?
19.
19, that's right.
And funnily enough, we are still good friends. Hang out pretty regularly. I actually saw her yesterday. So
Awesome.
But after that, went through a series of relationships. Dated a high school sweetheart for a few years in college, but never really had a serious adult relationship. And then until much later in my 20s, I was living in Spokane, working at a bar, met a wonderful woman. We ended up dating for 2 years. She ended up moving to Western Washington with me. But we were both not in great places in our lives.
Yeah.
We were both heavy drinkers and not really emotionally available for each other. And I think caused a lot of trauma for each other that I definitely feel a lot of responsibility for. And after that relationship ended, I had a lot to work through. I quit drinking. I ended up living on the side of a mountain, making moonshine and living in a trailer on a friend's land.
That's probably my favorite machine story, I think.
Yeah, not a lot of people apparently just go live on the side of a mountain for a year off grid.
Not really, with no electricity, running water. It's definitely, you exceed your name, machine, as just being able to survive in those elements.
Well, yeah, I grew up doing a lot and learning a lot, so I've always, I like to say I collect trade skills like trading cards. I like being useful and fixing things, and so I've picked up a lot over the years.
Yeah.
But living up there and spending so much time alone and really thinking about myself and who I wanted to be and what I wanted to do moving forward. Like I said, decided to quit drinking. Ended up back in my hometown, isolated myself, was angry at the world, focusing on myself, and ended up being celibate for 4.5 years after that. And a lot of that, I think, stemmed from the idea that I did not feel worthy of other people's love, of my own love, of physical attention, of joy. I just worked and distracted myself and tried to get by.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until our friend Allie ended up back in my hometown with me, and she saw the state I was in and how angry at the world and sad with life I was, and decided that she could help me by giving me some purpose, and said she needed my help to build a Burning Man camp.
And that was 2018,
That
Bird.
was 2018, yeah. So I ended up building a bunch of infrastructure, shade structure, bar, everything for Burning Man camp without ever going to Burning Man or really understanding what it was.
Yeah.
So I didn't quite get it. And then ended up going down there and had an amazing experience. Found a community of accepting people who wanted you to have joy and enjoy life and be different and not have to be the archetype of the American nuclear family, which is not something I ever felt called to.
Right.
So there was an experience I had Wednesday of Burn Week in 2018. I was helping do the lighting on this art install out on Playa called Kinesiosis. It was a big steel swing. and I was wearing a Sailor Mars outfit, free climbing the inside of this 30-foot steel wall, hanging LED strip tape at probably 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. I had taken some psychedelics, and this couple crawled onto the swing below me. So they're sitting on this half moon shaped piece of steel on a giant 20-foot arm, and they start making love. And for about 45 minutes, they're slowly enjoying each other's bodies and making eye contact with me and smiling and sharing this joy and love with their surroundings, with the people around them, with each other. And I started crying, and I just realized that I missed that kind of connection. I missed that affection in my life. And went and had a mental breakdown in my tent and cried for 8 hours, and classic Wednesday Burning Man things.
For sure. Yeah, it's that Wednesday, you're trying to get over the hump. It's...
Your stress has been building, and suddenly something just breaks.
Yeah, and not only that, but you are physically out there working, you're already exhausted. It's a lot.
That it is. And after coming back from that first burn, I called up an old friend and said, "Hey, I would like to be intimate again. Are you down?"
Yeah.
And started a physical relationship again, and started exploring those kinds of sensations and life in general again. Yeah. Got really involved with the local burner community that I was able to do collaborative art again and build things and work with people for the joy of it. And it, it's definitely a trope and a cliche, but going to Burning Man changed my life for the better.
I was literally going to say that. I was going to say, so Burning Man really was a pivotal moment in your life.
It was definitely a sea change.
Yeah.
But since then, I've definitely moved to the other end of the spectrum from celibacy.
Yes.
I don't like to say I am anything, as labels tend to be confining and restrictive, I think. But I've found polyamorous and pansexual to be useful in communicating who I am with people.
Yeah.
And it has been a great joy to experience, joy again.
Yeah.
To have the connections in life, platonic, romantic, physical, that I had denied myself for so long.
Right. So I want to get back to your current, life now, and not being celibate and being polyamorous and like being sexually active and all those things. So when you were on your new journey of being sober, and you got out of that relationship that you felt a lot of grief around, what was that time like for you personally? Like, what was going through your head? It sounded like you felt shame with that relationship, but were there other things that drove you? Because being sober that's hard to do, and especially because you were 10 years or 8 years of alcoholism.
I started drinking when I was 13, 14.
So
So yeah, and quit drinking 6 years ago now at 28.
Yeah.
So yeah,
15
a
years.
good 14, 15 years.
Wow. And so that's hard enough to transition from doing that every day to not, and then to also letting go another part of yourself, which was being free with your body and being sexually active. So what was that? Obviously it had to have been incredibly hard, but what were some of the things that were going through your brain during that time?
Shame, spite, anger. I was definitely an ascetic time in my life. I became anorexic as well. Wow. Went from 220 pounds down to 130 pounds. I feel like, looking back, that I was trying to punish myself. In the moment, I felt like I was trying to work on myself and be better and be a better person.
Yeah.
And that, well, it's the classic trope of, if I get, this, then I can do this. If I make this much money, then I can do what I want to do. If I, find happiness, then I can go be happy. But you can't really have landmarks and milestones like that, because life is never going to go exactly the way you plan. It's never going to be on your schedule.
And if you have these bullet points of where you want to be, you're gonna be let down, because life will happen, and it's easier to just flow with it rather than be like, no, I'm supposed to be here and I'm supposed to be here.
Expectations are the number one form of disappointment.
Yeah. And we are our own worst enemies.
Yeah. So finding a community of people that supported me and accepted me for who I was, because I definitely did not feel that in the years after I quit drinking. I was surrounded by people who were of a very different political and social mindset than me, who did not think of me as a peer, who were also very heavy into alcoholism and defeatism and Ludditism, and the idea that there was a specific way to live life and that I was not doing that, and therefore I was wrong and broken.
Right. It's such a small community out there too that it was hard to even find anybody.
Yeah, of like mind.
Right. Everyone's just, a small town. We think the same, we act the same.
And those who don't are not advertising that. I think a lot of what fueled my ability to be myself in that time and to have such discipline and willpower, not that all of it was directed in healthy or good ways, but spite is a hell of a motivation. To have living examples around you of which you do not want to be can be a very powerful motivation to be something else.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, that had to have been rough, just going through all these motions and waves of a new Zach all at once, and letting go of something that was a comfort for so many years, and something that was habitual, like drinking, and then having those thoughts of like, I'm not worthy enough and I'm not good enough, so I don't deserve to be with anybody or around anybody. Were there ever thoughts of like, also like, I'm taking this time to heal myself because I know that I'm not ready to be with other people and I don't want to hurt people further?
That was definitely on my mind.
Yeah.
I didn't want to inflict myself on others. My father was an alcoholic and was physically abusive to my mother. He ended up committing suicide on a family camping trip after beating my mother in the side of the head so bad that she lost a lot of her hearing in that ear and has permanent brain damage. And this happened in front of us kids, and there's strong motivation to not be that.
Right.
But at that point in my life, I definitely felt that I was becoming my father and did not want to be that.
Oof. Yeah.
My 32nd birthday a few years ago was a big milestone for me, because I was then older than my father when he died. I made it past the struggles that he did.
Yeah.
And that I feel like I've definitely moving in the right direction.
Yeah, 100%. You are, for sure. I love when Zach and I used to live together very briefly before I started van life, and it was during 2020, and it was this year where we were all, everything's going to shit, everything's going to hell, and he had just moved back to Seattle from Othello on that new chapter, post-Burning Man 2019, and it was just great always hearing you say, my life just keeps going up and up. But it was just awesome to have, that perspective from someone different. And it was a shit year for a lot of people, but there was also a lot of beautiful things that happened to you in 2020.
It
And
was.
yeah, with the past that you have not had an easy past even since like infancy, you know, and you're a very strong person.
Well, thank you.
And you definitely do deserve love, and I know you know that, and you get it, and all these beautiful things happen now. But yeah, there's that like that first initial like pushing through that like I I can't accept love for myself because I don't deserve it. And I think for me too, I have those thoughts, and then I have like for me it's like my mental health. Like I don't want to be with someone yet because I know that I need to improve more on like when I'm sad and when I'm frustrated and when I get down on myself and how I neglect myself some days. And um I never want to, yeah, inflict that on other people. So I've been celibate for like, I think 7 years now, which is kind of wild to say. But for me, I also feel like I don't, maybe for me at this time in my life, I don't need sex. And I think it's beautiful for me right now because now that I'm doing van life and I've got my little dog and we're on the road, I have time to focus on this like new adventure and also like get to know myself more. Because I feel, and maybe you can relate to this, that I spent so many years in pain and like being upset and unhappy and feeling unworthy that I lost who I was. Like I didn't know who I was.
Yeah.
And so now that I'm like able to physically explore and like get in the van and like travel around and do all these things, I feel like I'm literally like getting to know myself for the first time. And I think for me personally, before I want to enter into a relationship, because you know the asexual in me is just like I can't have one night stands. Like if I'm gonna be sexually active, I want to do it with a partner, like
Mm-hmm.
someone that I care about and someone that like shows that care and love for me. But I feel like I'm still learning about who I am. Like I just turned 30 and I feel like I'm learning all of these new things. And I love having friends like you and like Garrett who are in disco who are so explorative with themselves and their minds and their bodies. And I feel like listening to you guys talk about the things that you do and the experiences that you have and it's just really cool and it makes me feel excited for like when I get to have those experiences in the future when I'm ready. But I love how open you guys are about talking about all this stuff because like for someone like me, and it probably goes like hand in hand with this podcast, like someone could be listening to this like not having any relation to it, but it's cool to listen to other people's perspectives. And that's where like I sit with like hearing about like you knew life as a polyamorous person and being pansexual and exploring, and I just think that's great. But yeah, I feel like a lot of I'm just still learning about me, like getting to know who Kendra is.
I, I feel that I am definitely still learning about myself as
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
That is one thing I really do appreciate about you and spending time with you is that even though you are not a sexually active and sexually exploratory person, you are a very sex positive person.
for sure.
It does not have to be something you participate in
Yeah.
or go out and do all these things in order to be supportive of the conversation about other people's expressions and things like that.
Sex supporter.
Especially with your photography, it is
Very much sex supporter and body positive. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and I appreciate that a lot as
Thank you.
someone who considers themselves a sex positive person and feels that we should have more public conversation about the ways we view things in general, not just sex, but the biases we have ingrained about traditional aspects of life.
Yeah.
We know that the past is not the best we could do, that we can do better.
Right.
So let's discuss what we can try and what we can make better in the future, whether that be about sex, social conformity, the how we organize society in housing, jobs, scheduling, transportation. All of these things have been impacted by technology, but they have not been completely redesigned.
Right.
We're still stuck in the rails. Like, I can't remember who wrote it, but there's famous thought idea of when they designed the space station, they had to design every flat surface as a floor because there was no up or down. You didn't have walls. You didn't have a floor and a ceiling. You could have
That's
six
right.
floors in a room that you could
Right.
utilize as space. So if we designed things from the ground up without the biases that we've had from what we did in the past,
Right.
what would the world look like today?
Right. Wow, that's really cool. That's yeah, the 6 floors. That's because yeah, once you're up there, everything can't is a floor. This could be the floor 1 hour, and then this could be the floor the next hour. That's really cool. Wow. Um. So when you had that moment in 2018 Burn where you saw that couple and you were up there doing that, what were thoughts and feelings coming up for you? Was it just a whole bunch of your past? And I know you said you felt sorrow that you didn't allow yourself to feel that joy.
Yeah, there was a lot of regret because
Yeah, regret.
I I feel like I have a very strong willpower. When I decide to do something, I do it,
Yeah.
regardless of the cost or the effort involved. And I had decided to be celibate and decided to quit drinking, and those were hard lines.
Right.
And then seeing that expression of joy and love between two people, I was like, why did I cut myself off from that? So there was this grieving for chances lost, for this person I thought I was that I was not. Um, but at the same time, there was great excitement for future possibilities and this kind of epiphany and awakening of who I want to be going forward. And I feel like that's been a main theme in the last 6 years of my life,
Yeah.
is taking an active look at who I do want to be in the future and what steps I can take to make that come into being now, as instead of being worried about the next milestone and buying a house or getting married or being in a stable relationship and having kids. It's, for me, it's who do I want to be today? What do I want to do today that's going to serve my future self?
Yeah.
Uh, there's no hard lines. There's no deadlines. It's
Yeah.
just, well, ambitious hedonism.
Yeah. Love it. Such a Zach line right there. That's really cool. And I feel like I'm doing that a little bit more and more in my life too. But there's times where I genuinely feel like so scared and anxious about what, because like for not having like physical contact in that way with someone for so long, not doing that, and like the person who is a perfectionist in me who like wants to master everything and be good at everything because that's how I've received love my entire life, unfortunately. And that's the process that I've been in to receive life.
The gifted kid who has to be great at everything when they first try it.
Exactly.
I know the feeling.
Exactly. The kid who didn't receive love and who had to find love differently. And the kid who is an adult now who still doesn't receive love in that way, who has to keep pushing herself and build the van, travel the world, do all the things.
I know that feeling and I empathize with that because, yeah, you don't do something for so long that you build it up in your head and you don't want to be bad at it.
Yeah.
And the commercialization and media portrayal of sex has this idea that everything is smooth and passionate and flowing and that nobody trips or falls.
Right.
And
bodies have to be smooth, no hair, like all of this stupid stuff.
Vaseline on the lens.
Yeah.
And as a very active person now, sex is not like that.
Yeah.
Sex is not porn.
Yeah.
And the greatest sex you can have is with someone who is willing and enjoys laughing at the mistakes and the stumbles and the corny puns, and having a partner uh, who understands you and accepts you and is willing to allow you to explore that space in your body and to explore your feelings without judgment and expectations is definitely a key thing to loving yourself.
For sure. And being able to be shown that you can explore and it doesn't have to be a certain way. And I think like as a woman, I get like scared about like, do I have to be a certain way if I'm like intimate with a man, or all of these things that like pop up and like sometimes make me scared or nervous. So yeah, so when you called up your friend, that was great. I love that, like the instant, like, all right, I'm ready to do this and I know that I'm going to do this. But what was it like, not just that time, not like that time, but moving past that? How was your experience being more open? Was it scary, or were you just like, I've been waiting for this. I'm fucking ready. And I'm so much more confident in who I am as a person and I know what I deserve. I'm ready to do something different.
It was definitely not a wave of confidence and ability. It was
fair,
awkward. It was jerky. It was... I'm a person that when I'm nervous or... I also tend not to get hints and social cues very well. So I ask a lot of explicit questions.
Yeah.
And consent is something that is very important to me.
Yes.
So I can be overly communicative and awkward.
Yeah.
And I was lucky enough to have a person in my life who was a good friend, who is a very openly sexual and openly exploratory person who was willing to allow me to be that and to coach me back into the active sex life that I now have.
Yeah.
We are still partners and very much enjoy each other's company to this day. And they have taught me a lot.
Yeah.
But it was not smooth. It was not just a quick decision and suddenly I'm polyamorous and having multiple partners.
Right.
It was...
Right. It was an incline, exactly.
Finding...
building up.
What I wanted and what felt good to me. And really the polyamory thing was realizing that I had loved and still do love so many people in my life. And that physical expression of that love is just some small facet of that relationship. Like, I love you and we have a platonic relationship. I love so many people in our friend circle, and it's not all of them in a platonic relationship.
Yeah.
But it's the separation of romantic love and partner love and familial love and platonic love is not something that ever felt clear in my mind. The separation of those boundaries is, in my mind and in my relationships, about what serves those people the best. What are their boundaries and my boundaries? Where do those conflict and where do they align? And it's not these predefined roles of this person gets to be this kind of friend, this person gets to be this kind of friend. It's, this is a person. I enjoy my life interacting with their life. And whatever is the best way for that interaction to bring the best joy to both of us for the longest period of time is the way I want to pursue that relationship. A utilitarian. The greatest joy for the greatest amount of people for the longest time.
Yeah. That's beautiful. That's probably a very polyamorous way to look at relationships, I assume. Because, you're like, I love everybody, but I have sex with these people, and then I hang out with these people, I play D&D with these people, we do board games with these people, and then we go to Burning Man all together sometimes. And
that is a very messy Venn diagram.
But it's your Venn diagram.
It is. I consider myself a relationship anarchist.
Yeah.
As for those unfamiliar with ethical non-monogamy and polyamory in particular, there's several different ways people like to organize their relationships.
Right.
Mine is not.
Yeah. Yeah. But you don't have these other constraints of, you're not physically tied to somebody, like marriage bound. And that's not something I don't think you were interested in. So that's why this polyamory is just like, this fits. Like, this is what, and you get to love as many people as you want and have people love you back. And you were so isolated for so many years. So I get that, like, what did you just say? Something about relationships, but a serial relationship person, or just
relationship anarchist.
Relationship anarchist. And that just totally makes sense for you because you were on the side of a mountain and living in Othello with other people who were not on your same wavelength. And I think it's really cool and beautiful to see how you've like blossomed to this place that's comfortable for you and that you enjoy. And yeah, like you were saying earlier, getting yourself when you were younger doing the things that you wanted to be today. And I think you do that well. You've done it. You've completely done it.
It is, like all things in life, a work in progress.
Yeah.
But I'm very happy with how it's turning out.
Right. Well, that's amazing. So that's really cool that, you said like when you were going back to this, he just wants to be with you. If you guys can't hear already, my dog's with me, but he's always with me, so. But he's being very good. He just wants pets. He just wants Zach's love. So when you were going through the transition to being kind of solo and isolated and coming into this new life, how has that changed your life in any other ways? Like, or what is the difference that you feel like within yourself, like compared to like 10 years ago? And I know it's very broad because 10 years ago it was very dark and different. And
I feel much more confident and capable. Spending that year on the mountain definitely taught me that I was capable of great feats of endurance and mental and emotional and physical endurance. I spent a summer, in 2011, so just over 10 years ago.
wow.
I bought a motorcycle, quit my job, and spent 3 months just riding around with a sleeping bag and a backpack, camping on the side of the road, hiking up in the mountains, and eating out of a 60-pound bag of barley I stole from the pig farm I worked at when I quit. And that I have spent a lot of time alone in life.
Yes.
My upbringing, I didn't feel like I had a lot of confidants and people I could rely on for emotional support.
Yeah.
So feeling capable of being alone and knowing that I can do it allows me to open myself up and be vulnerable to a lot more connections now.
Yeah.
Because I'm not afraid that if this doesn't work out, I will be broken.
Right.
If this relationship ends, as all relationships will end, as all lives will end, it's not going to break me because I can be on my own, which I think is great that I use that ability to explore and open myself up to as many connections and relationships with people as I can.
Yeah.
It allows me to experience a lot more, as I am addicted to knowing.
Yes.
I want to know all the things.
Same.
I want to experience all the things.
Same.
So at that point I was just like, well, now's the time. You're just going to take the time.
Yeah.
Sit and think through this and learn how to be yourself.
Yes.
Learn how to deal with all these things that are in your mind without self-medicating it away.
Right. All these demons that you have, all these emotions, all the trauma, all the fears, all the failure, everything.
Yeah. And it is a lot. And sitting and processing that and peeling it apart in your mind is almost more traumatic than going through it.
Yeah.
You can shut down and survive very well. I mean, as humans, we are built to do that quite well.
Right.
Oh, you lose an arm? Keep running. It's going to kill you if you don't.
Exactly.
But sitting there and picking it apart and reliving it, whether it's abuse or trauma or even physical pain, it's forcing your brain to relive that and then dissect it and try to understand it is a lot.
Yeah.
And the fact that we don't have a culture that is openly communicating about how hard that is and how useful and necessary that is for a happy, healthy social community, I find not good, Dave.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think a lot of people are in a similar boat that we are in, have been in, and it is hard to be alone with your thoughts, but it is also very powerful. And I kind of take comfort, I take comfort obviously for myself, knowing that like a lot of people turn to being in like a relationship, like committed relationship, because they can't be on their own, because they don't want to go through those thoughts. They don't want to sit by themselves every night and think about the shit that they went through during the day, or the shit that they went through 10 years ago that's popping up during, that day. Mm-hmm. And it's incredibly hard. It is. And like you said, it's almost more traumatic in a way to like relive that. And especially when you don't have somebody to bounce your, ideas or feelings off of, which is beneficial in a way, because self-growth, like true self-growth, like soul healing growth, it only comes from you. Like you can't have your partner heal you. Maybe you can have your partner be there to support you through your healing. But a lot of people, that's hard to find in some relationships, especially if it's a new relationship. But I find that if people really change when they're on their own and they can sit with themselves and their thoughts and their feelings and what's going through their body, how their nervous system is feeling, and what they need to do for themselves to be this person that they see themselves being in the future. And yeah, I agree. I don't think it's talked about enough. And I feel, and especially in like today's society where we can order food and it can be delivered by our door and we don't have to go to the grocery store, we don't have to do anything. And it's even more isolating. And then we have like our phones and the social media and media to just like fall back on, to like sometimes like, okay, I'm gonna like get out of my thoughts and I'm gonna like watch Trixie Mattel on YouTube, me. And we kind of like do these things that also alleviate it in a way, but it is incredibly hard to go through that. But also and especially like doing that while being celibate, not allowing yourself to almost like release in some way, but making yourself continue going through this painful journey because you know that you're going to be here at the end of this shit you're sifting through.
Your idea of the goal is worth it.
Yeah.
And that's, keeping motivation through a long-term, ascetic challenge like that is hard. And that's why, whether it be fasting or celibacy or a workout routine,
quitting drinking, quitting some substances, getting out of the toxic job.
Getting up and eating a healthy breakfast. It's hard to do that without those rewards,
right?
Without the little dopamine releases that come with everything in today's society, with the instant gratification.
Right.
Not that I don't think we should have those things.
For sure. They're great.
But I feel like we should definitely, as a culture, talk about how long-term planning for not your financial future, not your career, but for who you want to be as a person.
Yes.
For
Yes.
what life you want to live.
Yes.
And not just, well, I'm going to have this job for the next 30 years so that I can have this kind of retirement. It's what do you want to do with your life? How do you want to spend your time over the next 30 years? Because how you get the money to pay for that should not define those 30 years.
Right.
Anyway, getting off my sexuality and into my anti-capitalism.
We could talk about that for a while.
Wrong podcast.
Wrong podcast. Another episode.
But yeah, the idea that we as a society don't look at a person for who they are and allow them the freedom to choose who they want to be and how they want to live their lives, I think causes a lot of undue stress and strife and creates a lot of lack of connection for people.
Right. Now, when you were single and you're still, you're in relationships now. Did you, because I feel the pressure as a woman, not thankfully from any of my friends or family or acquaintances, but the societal pressures of, and it's just like you were talking about, you need to go to college and get this job and get the house and everything, but it's like, oh, you need to reproduce by the time you're 30 and you need to be married. Mm-hmm. And then I think people looking at the single woman is like, what a waste. Almost, why live your life for yourself? You should be bearing children and running a household or utilizing your life and time better than just living it for yourself. Did you ever feel that?
I feel some of that societal pressure, but at the same time, I feel like I've done my part. I have no plans on reproducing. Yeah. My genetic trauma ends with me. Mm-hmm. But I am a proud uncle, and to my biological brother's kids, as well as my friends' children, I am involved in spreading the knowledge and skills and perceptions that I have gathered in my life to the next generation. I feel that I am putting a lot of value into our society as a human being. Yes. And that has nothing to do with land ownership, marriage, state contract about who I'm sleeping with, or my gametes reproducing. There is so much that we can do for each other that has nothing to do with the American dream. Right. That I have a great sense of pride and accomplishment in who I am as a person. Absolutely. Whether or not I, end up penniless when I retire or never own land, that's not important to me as much as living a good life. And having an impact on those that you love. That's one of my favorite Stoics, Marcus Aurelius. I'm probably misquoting it, but he said, live a good life, for if there is a God and he is just, he will judge you justly. Mm-hmm. If there is a God and he prefers piety over a good life, then he's not worth praising. Right. And if there is no God, you will have lived a good life and left the world a better place. Yeah. Yeah. I love that you mentioned that, because one of our very good friends that we see weekly, Maggie and Curtis, they have 2 sons, Freddie and Iggy. And Maggie, one of my best friends, I remember one day she was telling me, she was like, I am so adamant about having community around my children, because I want my children to not grow. I want them to grow up and know that they have, a mom and dad and aunts and uncles and grandparents, but I want them to have other positive influences. And you're uncle to them and I'm auntie to them, especially
Maggie, I love this. She said she thinks Freddie is convinced that I'm just blood ant. And when she said that, I swear my tiny little sad, depressed, black heart filled up just a little bit because it just made me so happy. But when I think about it, I didn't have a lot of positive role models that were not my parents or like my aunt and my uncle. And I love my family and my extended family, but sometimes they're not, they're just, they're my aunt, my uncle, or they're my grandma or my grandpa. They're not necessarily positive all the time, or, but it's like having a family friend that is close, that spends time with the kid like their blood niece or nephew. I think that's so important. And that's what I love about being single Auntie Kendra is I have so many beautiful babies in my life and like my second cousins who I am blood related to. It's so fulfilling to see them grow. And like personally, I don't think I want children either. Just because the fear of passing something on to them that I've struggled with most of my life is something that I don't want to do. And let's not even get into the world or the climate or politics. But just being able to be a pillar in other small humans' lives that I love so much and being able to be somebody that they can look up to and that they can come to talk with that isn't just like blood family, but someone that they know that they can love and trust. And I think that's so cool. And like, yeah, so I was just piggybacking off of what you said there. But I think it's awesome that we kind of are in this position to be able to do that for the kids that we love in our lives.
Gonna be the cool aunt and uncle.
Exactly. We already are. We already are the cool aunt and uncle. But I think also back to like what we were talking about, just with being the cool aunt and uncle, we have this perspective, and especially being alone, being celibate, we have a perspective that not a lot of people have, and it's something that is of value to teach to a younger generation, especially if they ever, I don't have any blood nieces or nephews, but my best friend Chelsea has a daughter, and I love her so much, and I just am excited to be there for her in the future and watch her grow. And, if she's ever at a point in her life where she's single and doing her own thing, I can be like, hey, I've been there. And it's hard, but it's also like, it's really beautiful and it's transformative, and it's not, and this goes along with being celibate too, like, society thinking that like celibacy, like there's people wrong who are celibate, and then there's people wrong who are like alone or like stay alone. And I think that's fucked up. Yeah. I mean, like we said, it's hard and it's difficult, and we understand why people turn towards relationships, but I think there is such beauty in it too. And it's not discussed. It really isn't.
No, being alone with yourself is a beautiful experience. Yeah. And the fact that, we don't have these choices. We're told that there is one way to be, and not that there's this plethora of lives to live that you can experience and try out and see what fits and see who you are.
Or there's one way to be loved, like you have to do this.
The whole trope of the spinster, the fact that we even have a word for that, like, oh, it's an unmarried old woman.
Yes.
And they become this archetype of a person in the social mind. Like, there's as many different types of unmarried older women as there are unmarried older women. Every person is unique. Everyone has their own unique reasons, their own unique stories. Yeah. And to try and other people who aren't you is never going to create a happier, healthier society. Right.
Yeah, it's unfortunate how those who go differently with the grain of life and society and the events that you're supposed to experience in life at certain ages or stages of life, it's truly unfortunate. Because oftentimes I'll feel, and this is my own stuff that I just have to like process. I have to get like to the state of where you're at right now. But there's some times where I feel like I am a burden around other people in my life, even friends, because my way of living isn't their way of living, and it's hard for some people to even just socialize in that way. Like I have some friends that I think they would rather socialize with other partners because they're partnered up. And so I feel like sometimes more of an outcast. And I know I kind of just need to get that out of my own head, but I do live a very solo nomadic life, and I'm not frequently around, my friends or Washington, even where I have most of my community. But it is hard to even just break out of that yourself, even though, it's like, you're doing this thing in life that's different, and it's beneficial for you, and it's hard, but you still sometimes have that, like, you really aren't good enough. You're not good enough for these friends, or you're not good enough for these people, or...
There's always that voice in your head. When you show up to the party, and then you realize you're the only one who's not paired off.
Right.
Or you're the only one there without a college degree.
Right.
Or without a home.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
But,
do you garden? No. I don't have any live plants. I can't afford it. They'll just die.
And yeah, there's always that voice telling us, and I think everyone has that everyone else is laughing at you.
Right.
Or talking about you because you're the one that's sticking out. You're the one that doesn't fit. But
right.
Everyone is feeling that way.
Right, exactly.
And no one is thinking that about you.
Yeah, very true. Very true.
If they are, they're assholes.
Exactly.
You don't want to hang out with them anyway.
Exactly. You find your people further and further, as you progress in life.
And sometimes, you have to go to the middle of the desert in Nevada to find your Seattle crew. But...
Yes. And find yourself and have your life change drastically. Oh, yeah. I feel like when it comes, like Burning Man, this is a great topic for this. My 2 experiences at Burning Man were really great. I mean, obviously this last time was hard with the weather and the dust and everything, but there's still a part of me that is learning more about who I am and what I want in life and just who Kendra is. And in an area where it's so exploratory and there's no rules, I still both times found myself holding back a lot. Especially in this place where it's just like, I can do whatever the fuck I want here, like anything. But I think my life and what I'm used to and everything that I've ever told myself and what I've been given from others, even at a place that is so open and some people will drastically do all these different things, just to try or have fun or do all these things. I still sometimes find myself holding myself back. And I do that a lot in life too. And it's still something that I'm working through, which is why I still feel like I'm on this journey of being a solo on my own and being celibate, because I still feel like there's so much more for me to get to a point of feeling like I'm ready to like break loose. Like I'm actually ready to do something quite different in life and feeling like I can give myself that permission. But that is scary, and Burning Man is beautiful, but it made me sad to realize that in a way that I wasn't allowing myself full freedom at a place that there is just full freedom. But it's that habitual, it's just like, my body knows what to do. My body tells me to stop here. My body tells me to walk away here. And yeah.
It is an interesting place because, as you said, just for, reality's sake, there are rules, there are cops, there's safety, there's a 5-mile-an-hour speed limit.
Yes. Yes, there are some rules put in place at Burning Man.
But it is this culture in this space where you are supported and made specifically, purposely to feel that you can do anything and you're allowed to do anything, to express yourself, to be happy, to explore.
Right.
But even in that space, and even as polyamorous pansexual, I've never hooked up with anyone at Burning Man.
Right.
There is...
sanitary issues, no kidding.
attention issues, I think.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not just a festival, it's not just a
Right.
sex party. It's,
No.
I mean, there are those things at the place, but it is a city,
It's a city.
and there's so much going on
Yeah.
that my joy in being there is the build, the
Yeah.
experience, the participation. It's There's something for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever you want out there, you can find.
Right.
So I think, but until, like you were saying, until you're ready to allow yourself to go find what you want,
Yeah.
that work's going to be inside you.
Right. For sure. Yeah.
But having a place and a community and a support system that gives you the freedom to explore yourself and to fail and make mistakes and try new things is inherently necessary to
For
figuring
sure.
that out for yourself.
Right. Yeah. And then it's also about bringing that back to real life. Like, how can I bring this back to real life, like this experience, and apply this to life and feel comfortable enough to go up to someone at a coffee shop and say, hey, I really love your outfit. Or go up to someone and say, for me personally, I would love to photograph you. Like, just, yeah, stuff like that. But yeah, Burning Man is a magical place. And if anyone has not gone, Zach and I highly recommend. It is quite transformational. And yeah, I mean, even like this last burn where I felt like I wasn't doing a lot because the heat was just a lot. And I had so much fun just hanging out at camp with friends and stuff and new friends. But it's just fun to just be there. Like, even if I didn't go out and explore most days, and if I was just sitting at camp, meeting new people, that was enough for me most days. Just being in this place that wasn't like real life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to be surrounded by a community that doesn't have expectations of you, that
Yeah.
allows you to be free and yourself. And if yourself is, sitting drinking a White Claw in a lawn chair at camp in a nice shade structure in
Yep.
110-degree heat,
Yep.
it's nice to feel welcome doing that as well.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful, beautiful place. And I'm excited to keep going in the future and see how I evolve the more and more I go, with how I evolve more and more personally in life, and like being more comfortable being who I am. And, you know,
I'm excited to see that for you too.
I'm excited to watch you actually blow something up one day at the burn. I've seen you blow up other things, but at the burn.
Yeah. Our art build this year got canceled because of a windstorm, so we didn't get to light it on fire. But,
Right. Yeah, that was an experience. Okay, well, we can wrap up here. I have like a couple just end questions. So for those who are listening, if you can give someone any like advice or wisdom that you have gathered in your own life when it comes to either being celibate or walking this journey of being alone, and especially as someone who's like on the other side of it, kind of, what that process was like for you, and maybe what you learned the most that you like could give others advice about, like on how to either just persevere and keep moving, or
You're never going to feel ready.
yeah.
It's, if you're waiting until you're at that point where, and no matter what it is, whether it's celibacy or a job or anything,
Right.
take some time, think it out, do what's best for you, but don't wait until you're in your mid-30s to finally say that, oh, I'm ready to try this.
Yeah.
We all figure it out as we go. The older I get, the more I realize that everyone else here has no big picture. There's no administration, there's no council calling the shots,
Yeah.
who know all the answers.
Yeah.
We're all just figuring this out as we go.
Right. At different stages too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And even now, I mean, like you say, I'm on the other side of it, but I still feel like that same person. I just have so many more new great experiences, but
Yeah.
I'm still learning who I am. I'm still figuring out what I want to be and who I want to be.
Right.
And I hope that I will be until the day I die.
For sure. If you're not continually growing, then you're not living. Yeah.
But I would be true to yourself.
Yeah.
Don't let the fear of what others may think stop you from living your best life and being who you want to be.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. It's good advice. And yeah, you will always continually be learning. And even though you're in a very different stage of life right now, you're still always learning. There's still more that you're like, okay, well, now that I'm here, we're going to go through this, or we're going to move through this, or I want to now explore this. And yeah, there's always just, and like we were talking about earlier, it's nice to just realize that when you don't plan out life and you just allow life to happen and you just flow with it and say, okay, this happened, I got in a car accident or whatever, and I'm just gonna lost my limb, I'm just gonna keep going. And if you can just move with the waves of your own life, it's very powerful. And if you try to stop it or bullet point your life and all this stuff, it can just get a little chaotic and rocky. And there's power in just like letting life happen. Yeah. Okay. Zeke, you did pretty good. You were very fidgety. Probably because it's in the morning, but you did very good. Well, he's very dandruffy. We're going to shake this off. Sorry.
Oh, no worries. I'll vacuum it.
Well, Zach, you're amazing. I love you so much, and I appreciate that we got to sit and have this conversation. And maybe I'll have you on the podcast again one day, and we'll have another topic to discuss about or talk about this one even further.
Well, whether we record or not, I look forward to future conversations with you.
Yes, and game nights.
Yes. Should I stop it?
Yeah, stop it.